Well, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Parks, Recreation, Human Services, and Public Safety Committee to order at 5:04 p.m. on February the 11th, 2020. Is there any public comment? Any public comment? All right, seeing none, we're moving on to committee business. First item on the agenda is approval of the December 10th, 2019 minutes. May I hear a motion?
I guess we weren't here, but go ahead, huh?
I move to approve, huh?
It's just you two tonight.
I know, but I'm saying we weren't, neither of us was at that meeting.
We'll just have-
I move to approve the minutes from, when is it?
The
I'm sorry.
December 10th.
December 10th,
2019
2019 minutes.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. Moving on to item B on the agenda, the DSHS respite care in a community settings. Kevin Hutchinson, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Commissioners, for having me tonight. For you that don't know, my name is Kevin Hutchinson. I'm the Inclusion Coordinator with the Parks Department. I run all of our programs for people with disabilities, programs ranging from life skills, social skill programs, Special Olympic sports, overnight trips, all of the above. And what we have in front of you tonight is our community respite contract that is due for renewal. We've had this contract in place since 2009, so this will be year 11 that we've had this in place. And this has been very beneficial for not only the participants and their families, but also the Parks Department as well. We have over 115 right now participants that are on our respite care roster. Basically what happens is each person can qualify for a certain number of dollar amount to pay for recreation activities or caregiving activities. That is done through DSHS in the state. They can sign up for our programs at the community center, and they reimburse, DSHS basically reimburses us for those costs. So there's no out-of-pocket cost for those families. So as you can see, it's very beneficial to low-income families that have children with disabilities, people living in group homes. They can sign up for as many programs as they're qualified for, and we get reimbursed for that. Last year we had approximately $50,000 worth of funds reimbursed to us, so it's very beneficial to my program as well in a budget sense. As you can see, this agreement is very beneficial for all, for everyone involved, and if you have any questions, I'm here for answers.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I'm just going to clarify that this is a committee meeting, and so the members of the committee are myself, Chair Kochmar, and then Councilmember Lydia Safa-Dawson. We are joined by Deputy Mayor Susan Honda, Councilmember Mark Kopang, and Councilmember Martin Moore,
Right.
just for the audience.
Okay.
So do any of the council members or Deputy Mayor, do you have any questions of Mr. Hutchinson?
I appreciate the program.
Thank you.
I'm glad we have it. Thank you for all you do.
Lydia?
What's the age group?
Pretty much, I think the youngest person we have involved is 3 or 4 years old, ranging all the way up to 70 years old. So children with disabilities can participate in swim programs, day camps, karate lessons, and all the above. So.
Okay, thank you.
Now, if someone is interested, I know they go through DSHS, but can they come to the community center and just get information on that?
Absolutely, yeah. They can come directly to the community center. Most people get referred to us by their case managers. So people that work at DSHS, I have a relationship with all the case managers. They know of our programs. They know who to send them to. So I get a lot of people that are just sent my way from case managers.
So is it just for children, or do we have adults as well?
Adults as well.
Adults as well, okay. All right, well, thank you very much.
Madam
Councilmember Moore.
Kevin, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Just to share, Kevin was and is
Probably was ARC.
The board of directors for the ARC of King County.
Yeah, I served my term, 3-year term. I think it was up 2 years ago.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. And so really appreciated him serving in a regional capacity, in a bigger capacity. So that was really cool. And he actually came with me to Olympia when we lobbied on a few bills there. So it's good to see this. I wasn't sure if I saw this or not, but how many people does it serve, this?
This particular program last year on the caseload is about 115. Varies from year to year, but each year it's been growing. Since it first started in 2009, we had about 5, and so it's just getting more and more and more each year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Good question. Do I hear a motion?
I move to forward the proposed agreement to the February 18, 2020 consent agenda for
I'll
approval.
second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion
you.
carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Hutchinson. So now we're moving on to item C on the agenda, which is the monthly report on our PAC operations. Thank you. Could you pronounce your name?
Autumn Gresset.
Gresset. Thank you.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor Honda, council members. Brian and myself, as we have in months past, we missed you last month, are here to give you a report on the previous month's totals for what is going on at the PAC. You have in front of you a report that I sent out earlier today showcasing our theater rentals, some of which were our Arts for Youth programs, Korean American Day, Federal Way Symphony, as well as event-based rentals, Housing Development Consortium of King County this month. Brian attended APAP in New York City to meet with agents and review talent for around the country, as well as attended monthly LTAC meetings and gala and committee meetings. Some things to note for changes in January 1 of 2020 is that both our tech supervisor position and staff accountant positions went down to part-time, and our director of finance position is still open. Some marketing recap from last month is we do continue to have billboards up on I-5, as well as working with Tacoma News Tribune, Comcast Spotlight, as well as KNKX and Cairo Radio. And then for our rehearsal days last month, in comparison to 2019, we were down 4 rehearsal days. Performing arts rentals, which encompasses our resident artist organizations, we had 3, so same year over year. PAC Present Series, we had 1 this year. Arts for Youth Matinees, 2. We added 2 in comparison to January of last year. And then number of tickets sold, we are down slightly, but you can see in our gross rental revenue and food and beverage revenue that we have increased significantly. One thing to note as well as we move into 2020 and we talk about budgets is that we do have some rehearsals, as we've discussed in years or in months past, that don't have a rental associated with them. That's noted at the bottom here. We'll continue to note those as we go forward so you guys are well aware of where our revenue budgets are coming in. And then a couple things to note coming up is we do have Unity and Prayer Gathering tomorrow, the Doo-Wop Project on the 19th, and then the Federal Way Symphony Winter Concert on the 23rd. And if there's any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Council? No? I have a question, which is, I don't think we're advertising on social media, are we?
We are. Sarah Cho is the Director of Marketing over at the PAC. She's with Spectra Venue Management. They advertise on Facebook, Instagram, and other social media. It just depends on the performance and what works best. But social media, Facebook is a heavy presence for us, for all of our groups, whether it's resident artists, PAC Present Series, those kinds of things.
I often hear that people aren't aware of, people are very busy in their own lives, and they're not really aware. A lot of people are on those social media platforms, and so I really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I don't know if we do like evites on Facebook.
Brian can probably speak to the event evites a little bit more. Brian Hoffman is our general manager with Spectra Venue Management over at the PAC.
Yeah, so we have a list of about 10,000 people that we send out a weekly email blast to all of those folks that have previously attended events, or we have their data. So we send that out every Wednesday. It's usually between 10 a.m. and 12 noon, as well as Autumn had said, active on social media with Facebook, Instagram, et cetera. It just depends on the particular show that we're looking at and what advertising platform works the best. If you're referring to a Federal Way Symphony or some of our resident arts groups, that's where, some of those groups, it's their responsibility to advertise their particular show, where we assist with that, but if there's a cost associated with it, then we have to get their approval to add that to their bill, so to
So,
speak.
since we're live right now, could you inform people where they can send their information so they can receive information on
Yep,
that?
they can go to Federal Way, fwpaec.org, and there's a contact us link on that website, and we'll get it and send it to them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you. I was at the PAC Saturday night for the Seattle Women's Choir, which was absolutely amazing. I hope they come back again. There wasn't any or very little furniture to sit on in the lobby. And is that something that, is there just no furniture, or was it because there was another event there earlier and things hadn't been moved around?
No, prior to Spectre Venue Management, there was no furniture. We had purchased, since Spectre Venue Management took over, 10 benches that we have that were scattered throughout the lobby. With that particular group, unfortunately, what they did when they had their booths or tables set up is they utilized those as benches for their tables, and that's what they had. But we do have benches for folks to sit at prior to them coming in.
So who is Spectre responsible or the city responsible for getting more furniture in the?
The city is responsible for that.
Okay, because I really think that perhaps more people would have bought more wine or something, if they had a place to sit and be comfortable and relax before the show started or during intermission. And a number of people found me and told me that they thought it was unusual that there was no place for them to sit except on the windowsill, so.
And
Thought I would
that with that particular group, that was a rental. So we based how the lobby was set up based on the direction from that particular organization.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Council, are there any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we're moving on to item D, which is the 2020 Parks and Recreation Commission Work Plan. Looks
Good
like it's
evening.
Mr. Hutton.
I will be presenting in place of Jason Gerwin since he started his day at 5 a.m. today. I said, I'll handle that one for you. So thank you, Chair Kochmar, Deputy Mayor, and Council. Bringing to you this evening the Parks and Recreation Commission Work Plan. In front of you, you'll see that we have an ambitious work plan, including the annual playground equipment replacement program. This year will be Mirror Lake, and that is scheduled for a spring-summer installation. We've already done most of the work in preparation for that, and we're busy purchasing playground equipment now and getting ready for that installation. That will be a major improvement on that park. That was one of our very oldest playgrounds. We have 2020 volunteer events. These are big and getting bigger. Our next big one is obviously Parks Appreciation Day, and then we've entered into updating our park code, and so we've been working for the last several meetings on that, and there's been a subcommittee formed to finalize park code updates. We're entering into an agreement to master plan Steel Lake, Brook Lake, and Lakota in one undertaking. That will help us to be ready to apply for more grants. As you remember, last year we did the pros plan over about a year and a half, and that sets us up, and then having shovel-ready projects, including a master plan, will help us to obtain more grants to get more things done in our community. And we're working with the Parks Commission to develop a prioritization matrix for their work, where they kind of get a voice in prioritizing the work of the commission, and it will help us to be as efficient as possible as a commission. And then neighborhood parks, we're looking at developing some partnerships with neighborhood parks and residents that live close to or heavy users of those neighborhood parks to help kind of be stewards of the parks, if you will, kind of adopt a park, but that's kind of old and tired. So we're looking to come up with a name that they like, the people who are going to be participating in helping keeping the parks nice. being additional eyes and ears for Parks Department and police to help us with notification if there is unsavory activity. They'll let police know or us know if things need to be repaired. They're in the neighborhood, they're using the park daily, so they can help us with that. So with that, as you can see, it's a pretty aggressive work plan. That's a hardworking commission, and we're very happy with their work and our interactions with them. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Council, are there any questions? Go ahead, Councilmember Copang.
John, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Obviously, Parks is near and dear to my heart. Being
Mine
a former
too.
commission member, and I know it is to you as well. The master plan for both Steel Lake Park and Brook Lake, and well, and Lakota for that matter too. I think the first two, there's a question about getting funding necessary to do those. So those are really on hold until funding is identified.
Are you talking about Steel Lake and Brook Lake?
Steel Lake and Brook Lake, yes.
Steel Lake and Brook Lake, and the reason we went with this, I know it's unusual to master plan 3 separate parks.
Yeah.
The reason we're doing that is we can get some economy of scale savings by going 3 at a time.
Okay.
There's a certain cost in doing a master plan with a consultant. That cost goes up with the more public meetings you have. So if we consolidate the meetings into one night and we cover all 3, we'll get some savings. So that's the reason. Steel Lake Park has been in need of a
Yeah.
master plan revision for many years. It's full. We're often on sunny days in the summer, like almost every day over 75 degrees. We're closing the park by 11 o'clock in the morning. That's inconvenient for everybody. The parking lot gets overwhelmed. A new design will help to make the park more usable. It's a wildly popular park. It's a regional draw.
Yep.
So that needs it. And so that's the reason we combined the 3. We want to, and you're seeing, you get more points on the grading scale at the grant award time. You get more points the closer you are to shovel ready.
Okay.
And we don't have the ability to do a complete plan on each of those, but a master plan gets us in the ballpark of making us more eligible for grants and funding by having it be closer to shovel ready.
Okay. So is there some funding you're looking for from the council to get to the point of being able to hire a consultant and do a master plan for all 3 locations?
Not at this time. We have a source identified within our own funds of park levy money
Okay.
that we've been kind of squirreling away for years, and so we're trying to use that money. Anything you'd like to give us, we'd certainly appreciate.
Fantastic.
But
We'd always like to give you more money.
we appreciate that. But at this time, we'll be using park levy funding for
Okay.
that.
So for the when then, it says as funding available, funding is available is what you're saying?
Funding is available for the master plan process.
Okay.
The improvements that calls for
Oh, yeah.
would be, then that would be funding.
Okay,
available.
good. I just wanted to make sure I understood
Right.
this chart. This is basically what you're saying is you're going to start the process, the master plan is going to
Yes.
get completed in 2020.
That's the hope, is to get it done this year.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
there's funding available for that. Then probably in 2021, we'll start talking about what we can afford.
Correct, and it would be hopefully in the form of matches and things like that, where, we think, we've, been working with Chair Kochmar a little bit on some opportunities for some grants that she's aware of, and we work with our typical sources, and we'll continue to work with King County and the state, RCO, to
Excellent.
obtain grant funding.
No, I think those are 3 parks that are definitely in dire need of some improvements to make them more usable. So look forward to seeing what the commission comes up with. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council, are there any other questions?
I do have a question.
Councilmember Lydia Acevedo.
No worries. Thank you. Thank you. The Lakota Master Plan, it says continue pursuing or identifying funding options, and then strategize on how to get Federal Way School Board to partner in funding project. Who's doing that? Is it going to be staff or actually the commission members?
Staff,
Okay. Because that's the commission tasks. And then.
they help us
Okay.
to, plan our approach, but we have an excellent, just to let you know, we have an excellent relationship there with the school district, and have been working closely with them on some other things, including reworking our interlocal agreement with them regarding park maintenance on the shared facilities of Lakota, Sahali, and Sacagawea. So we've already gone down that road. We have excellent, one of our staff members, Cody Geddes, along with several of us in the department, applied for and successfully got a $250,000 grant last year to help do the field turf replacement at Sahali. And we've currently got a grant application in with King County for up to $250,000 to replace the track at Sahali. And we'll be partnering with the school district, and they absolutely partnered both in their work and their checkbook on the turf at Sahali. So they've been good partners, and we're happy with our working relationship with them and moving forward in that very positive vein.
Okay, thank you, that's great. And then neighborhood parks, such as commissioners to help organize and support neighborhood work parties, and so there's first quarter in there, but first quarter is almost over,
That's,
so.
the planning will start in the first quarter.
So by next month possibly, or is that something?
The planning will start. It'll be a topic on agendas of how
Planning.
they plan to go out and start to, we don't have the staff to go out and knock on doors and ask people if they use the park across the street.
Right.
And if so, would they be willing to help us in this, and this way? So the commission members have agreed to kind of take on a certain park that's not been identified, or a couple of parks, and go out and knock on some doors and ask people what they'd like to see in the park for future improvements, and would they be willing to help us in these other ways that I talked about, like adopt a park type of themes, of whether that's picking up litter, just being watchdogs to help us identify if there's a problem with a broken piece of equipment or disrepair on something that we haven't caught yet. It gives us more eyes and ears, and it also helps the police department to get notification from great neighbors to tell us if the parks are being used appropriately.
All right, great, thank you.
Councilmember Moore, do you have, no? What I would like to suggest again is a social media platform to get the information out there, so that people who want, there are people who walk along our roadways and pick up litter, as we
Absolutely.
discussed previously, and love to get them involved. Our volunteers, we call it Adopt a Park, the Bonneville Powered lines and the trails. Those are something else we need to also, I want to feel safe when I'm walking down our trails, like at Brook Lake or on Bonneville Power. I want to make sure we don't have pop-up tents coming there. I want to feel that we've got eyes watching, so that because that's really where your safety is, when you have a lot of people
Exactly.
watching what's going on.
That's exactly the theory behind this whole plan, and we have a lot of great people doing those things now. We just want to increase those numbers of great people doing great stuff in the parks. And we will use the social media. We heavily use social media at the community center through Parks and Recreation, and we will be getting the word out once the plans are made.
Yeah, and contacting, we'll make an announcement at the Quanians. All the Quanians here, raise your hand.
Right.
We have seen Mark.
I'm Rotarian now.
Oh, Rotarian, sorry.
And I'm a Lions.
And Lions, yeah,
That's really
all
important.
the volunteer groups. They, if they know about it, they'll help.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Were you aware that, oh, by the way, could you talk a little bit quickly about Parks Appreciation Day, just so people who are listening are aware of it?
Sure, and forgive me, I don't have the date memorized. I want to say April. I'm
Well, we know it's in
begging
April.
for some help over there. I'm thinking,
I know it's not April 25th. I think it's the week before.
I think it is, maybe the 18th or 19th, something. It's a Saturday in April, and I believe it is the third Saturday of April. So far, we've identified one park, but with the city's larger reach of the 30 for 30 program that's been launched by the mayor's office, we are prepared if we get overrun with volunteers. That'd be a great problem to have. We'll be prepared for that. But we're starting at the Blueberry Farm. That's a large piece of property that needs a lot of attention, the Gregor Brook Lake area, and we can spread into Hylobos from there. And we could also take a group over to Mirror Lake in preparation for the new playground that's going in, just to spruce that up. So Parks Appreciation Day is huge. We've had great help from LDS Church. We love our city. Hundreds of other great citizens that help us out. Without volunteers, we'd be hurting. Our service clubs have been helpful. The faith-based organizations in town have been super helpful, and we get great support from that each year, and it's tremendously beneficial to the whole city.
Thank you. Were you aware that down at the Super Mall, they're building a new indoor sports arena.
You mentioned that to me. I was not aware, and I haven't had the time to do the research on it, but
Yeah.
you mentioned that to me.
I'm wondering if we couldn't coordinate with them, because I know they have indoor basketball. I'm not sure what else, but if people are coming here for tournaments, it'd be sometimes they need to coordinate with surrounding facilities, whether it's soccer or basketball at the community center.
We absolutely partner with other cities all the time on athletic events. We work closely with Kent and SeaTac and Renton.
Yeah.
I mean, these large regional tournaments are not hosted by one city. They're too large, so
It's being
we definitely do that.
It's being built by a private company, but I understand the Auburn Chamber of Commerce knows all about it.
Great. Okay,
So,
I'll do some
yeah.
checking into that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think.
Councilmember Copang?
Yeah. Hey, John, the chair raised a question that I just wanted to make sure I get some clarity on. Obviously, we have a policy on no camping on public property. Have we had any issues with tents on the BPA trail that you're aware of?
Occasionally, it's happened.
Okay, all right.
It's not
And-
prevalent, and our police department is a fantastic partner with us.
Okay.
They do an amazing job. The minute we let them know, or they let us know in some cases, they provide an escort for us. We talk compassionately with the person. We give them all of the resources that are available in town. We give them a reasonable amount of time to remove their things and move on. And it's been very effective. And again, it's a partnership between us and PD that has been very effective. It's happened 4 or 5, maybe 6 times. It's not prevalent all the time.
Right.
And it's about the same rate in the parks. It doesn't happen
Sure.
in highly visible areas as much. But we've had it at Steel Lake, and we've had it at Hylebos, and it's happened.
But again, these things are checked on basically a daily basis, though, aren't they?
Absolutely, and this is the kind of the nature of the neighborhood park program of let us know, because
Yeah.
we'll take care of it. Us and the police work well together, and that partnership is very fruitful in helping these people to find services that they need and stop doing behaviors that are undesirable.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Deputy Mayor?
I actually had someone camping behind my house last year, and it was only a day or two, and they left and didn't leave any garbage behind, which was very nice. But, yeah, it does happen.
Yeah, it does.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Hutton.
You're
Appreciate
very
that.
welcome. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, hey, John. Sorry about that. Hey,
That was my blinding speed.
there you go. That was good. That was good. So, on the master plan Lakota Park, of course, it says item 2, strategize on how to get Federal School Board to partner in funding project. How is that? Because I know we've been talking about, I think we've lightly have talked about this before. And of course, we've talked about Sahali and all the other parks. But how's that going, and what's going to be different about it moving forward in terms of our approach?
I'm counting on my magnetic personality to change the equation. No, I'm just kidding. Like I said, we have an excellent relationship with them. They are aware that Lakota Park needs to be improved. We're aware that Lakota Park needs to be improved. It's a shared facility. We have good relationships. In the past, when this was broached a couple of years ago, they were just getting ready to start Federal Way High School, the reconstruction of Federal Way High School, and their money was in flux, and they weren't sure how much they were going to have left over. We had set aside a certain amount for that in hopes for a match. We had an idea of a project. It was about $1.4 million. We, the city, set aside about $700,000, knowing that we want a 50-50 partner with the school district. They were unable to do that at the time, but time has passed, and hopefully things are getting better. And the relationship is strong between Parks and Recreation and the school district. We have excellent working relationships with them. We're partnering on some programs. And so I think it's a natural, as long as they have the ability to do it, they want to make those improvements too. They want those students that go to school there to be able to play on nice facilities and be able to utilize those. And we want the same for the community. But we need that partner. Financially, we need the partner, and from a standpoint of just responsibility, we need the partner. And I'm confident that is heading in the right direction, and Once we get to this master plan, then we'll go and talk to them and figure out, we'll get a approximate cost estimate on what we think we can reasonably do. A master plan was done many, many, many years ago, like
Right.
18 years ago. It was a crazy big number. We have value engineered that inside and know that we can't afford that kind of an improvement at Lakota, but it definitely needs to be improved, and it'll be beneficial to both organizations and all the citizens and visitors to Federal Way.
Is there a desire to potentially, and I say this knowing the fact that it's too early to do this, but I'm hoping there's a desire to meet with the PTAs and watchdogs maybe, just to get feedback.
Probably a little further down the road.
Exactly.
We know we're constrained by certain boundaries at Lakota Park, and there's certain things that need to be done there. We envision a largely field turf footprint out there, which helps us in a couple of ways, and it helps the school district. We're both woefully short on maintenance, and we want to be careful not to fall into the trap of thinking field turf is zero maintenance, because it's not. It still requires maintenance, routine maintenance to be done to maintain it. However, it's far less maintenance and far less cost because you're not watering it, you're not irrigating it, you're not fertilizing it, you're not doing the heavy turf maintenance that you would do on natural grass. But we envision a footprint out there that would be largely field turf, which then is playable year-round. It's good for everybody. All the sports can use it, and it's good for everybody from soccer to football to track and field, PE classes, everything. And so there's a lot. We're really preliminary. We don't have we have some things in our heads that may change. This master plan project includes a ton of public outreach. So there's lots and lots of public meetings, and people, the groups will be invited, the PTAs and the students and the parents. Everybody will be able to participate in this if they choose to. All they need to do is come to the meeting and their voice will be heard. So, and that'll be well publicized. So just like we did with the pros plan, we had stakeholders identified for Brook Lake, and we had over 40 people show up at a meeting at the community center for that. We do public meetings when we do a playground replacement, and go talk to those parents and kids about what would you like to see in your playground that's next to your school. So, we try to get as much public input as we can to try and meet the needs and desires of our citizens.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Sevadasan, thank you for reminding me that this is an action. Please, do you have a motion?
I moved forward option 1 to the was it January 21? Nope, wrong date. Sorry. To the February 18th, 2021? 2020? Sorry, I need to look at the date.
We're just authorizing to accept the 2019 voter-approved King County Proposition Parks Levy and authorize the mayor to sign the Parks Property Tax Levy Agreement.
Nope,
Am I on the
no,
wrong
no, no,
thing?
I have the right one, I just have the wrong date.
Okay.
Is it February 18th? Okay, let's start. Let's start over. I move to forward option 1 to the February 18th, 2020 full council consent agenda for approval.
All right, and I second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was ahead of myself here. Now we're talking about the property tax levy agreement.
Yes.
Steve Eichert, thank you.
Good evening, Chair Coachmeyer, Deputy Mayor Honda, and council members. The policy question before you as it relates to this property levy is, should the city accept a 2019 voter-approved King County Proposition Park levy and authorize the mayor to sign the park property levy agreement? So as you may be aware, last year there was a voter-approved levy for parks in general in the King County area. And what this is they've now officially, it passed overwhelmingly, and now they've officially sent the paperwork to us to enter into an agreement to receive those funds from that levy. So that's essentially all this is just, it's the paperwork follow-up to that levy. So the question before you for authorization is to accept the 2019 voter-approved King County Proposition Levy and authorize the mayor to sign that levy agreement.
Council, are there any questions? Well, the obvious one is, how much are we expecting from it?
Well, we know last year's, at the tail end of last year's levy that just ended, we got about 194,000. So we would expect we'll be getting that much, if not more, in this new one, because I think the levy amount went up just slightly. So we don't know the exact amount yet, but I think it'll be excess of 194,000, which we received at the end of last one.
Okay, do we have any?
And that's per year.
Sure, are we targeting that to any specific?
Right now, we're just putting it in a fund for future use. One of them, which Director Hutton mentioned, would be use some of that money from the past levy to do these master plans. But we could certainly use some of that money for these improvements in the future for matching funds, I think is a
Right.
good way to look at this.
Right, is it sometimes half of the matching? If you're going to do construction, you have to have.
Often that is the case, yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Sefa Dawson?
I move to accept, what? Okay, to accept, no, I move to forward option 1 to the February 18, 2020 City Council agenda for approval.
Okay. So we're authorizing to accept the 2019 voter-approved King County Proposition Parks Levy and authorize the mayor to sign the Parks Property Tax Levy Agreement, correct?
No, not yet. We're just gonna move it to the committee council, and the council will do that, the consent agenda. Committee just forward.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Thank you. I'm trying to catch up here, guys. Ah, thank you. What she said, I'll second.
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you.
Item F, Field Turf USA retainage release. That's Steve again.
Okay, so the policy question on this is another formality. Should the city accept the Sahali soccer field replacement work as complete and authorize staff to release their retainage to Field Turf USA? We completed that project of putting new artificial turf on the Sahali soccer field end of last year, and the work is complete. It looks great, being played upon. The project itself ended up about $719,000. So the retainage portion of that has been held out is $32,700.39. So that's what the staff is recommending, that you approve the work as complete so that we can release that back to them.
Counselor, are there any questions? I'm just out of curiosity, where did we find the money for the $719,000?
Okay, so we got a King County youth grant, and I think it was, for 250 or 350, and then we got 50,000 from the Soccer Association, and then the city split the remainder of that, which was about 214,000 each between us and the school district. So it was kind of a four-way split: a grant, a donation, and the city and the school district split the balance.
Okay. All right, is there any other questions? Councilmember Sefa Dawson?
I move to forward option 1 to the February 18th, 2020 City Council consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Appreciate it. Steve, if we talk about making the turfs, the soccer fields at Celebration Park into turf,
Correct.
there's 8. So, and we'd have to come up with half those funds. I'm thinking, maybe if we took one at a time, like we did with this, and tried to put that money together.
I think that's a good approach. Coming up with half of the whole facility might be a challenge.
Right.
But
right.
once we get those, we're working on getting those numbers in now of what the estimated cost may be, then we'll be able to see what's available through RCO and other sources.
Are there lights on the soccer fields?
There are, and we've just gotten a new estimate for that as well of how much would it cost to update them to LEDs. And so we do have those costs now.
I'm just thinking maybe, once we find out about that indoor soccer, and I don't know if it's indoor soccer, indoor arena, it's huge. The one that's going in at the Super Mall, I understand it's really big.
Uh-huh.
As soon as we find out what's going on there, we need to start partnering with folks and trying to, work up here. Sports are huge, and a lot of money in that. And, start bringing people up here and trying to figure out how we can attract that.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Okay, moving forward, we're now on to item G, report on crime statistics and jail services. Chief Juan.
All right. Good evening, Chairwoman Kochmar, Deputy Mayor, members of the council. I will be presenting the fourth quarter public safety report. Typically, I would do this in January, but because of the weather, inclement weather conditions, it's been delayed a month. So I'll be sharing with you crime statistics and jail services progress, and also I'll be sharing with you some traffic statistics as well. All right, so this is our NIBIRD numbers. We report 27 crimes, and this is a standard way of reporting crime for communities in Washington State. So this is comparing a whole year's worth, 2018 to 2019. And from 2018 to 2019, we had an overall crime reduction of 9%. So if you look at the very bottom, last year we had 8,387 crimes. This year, 7,611. So this is pretty much, I think, the final number that we'll be reporting to WASPIC and to the FBI. And I'll just go over some numbers here, and I'll have other charts to present to you. So when you look at your murder numbers here, in 2018, we had 1 murder. Just to give you an idea, and last year we had 3. So on average, historically, we average about 5 homicides in our community. So, and in 2019, we didn't have a homicide until October, and then we had 2 in December, just right at the end of the year. And then down here, one of the crimes I want to share with you, forcible rape offense, that's a violent offense. We had 130 last year, and we had 67 reported to our agency. That's a significant drop there. Also, robbery, last year we had 156, the year before 233. And what I can tell you is that there's just a little less of armed robbery of cell phones and strong arm robbery of cell phones. That's kind of dropped off. I would also tell you that internet meetings where robberies might occur, it seems like it's kind of dropped off. I think citizens are really cautious about who they meet and how they meet now, so that's dropped off. And so I think that's the explanation I can give you on the drop-off on the number of robberies, which is down 33%. And aggravated assault is also down 17%. These are felony assaults, more than just a minor injury. And significant number of these are domestic violence related. And then when we come to the commercial burglary, we have been trending up on commercial burglary. Last year we had 298. And the year before, 291. We're up a little, but if you look at the trend for the last 5 years, we've been kind of ticking up. On the positive note, and these burglaries are kind of one of those key indicator crimes, and usually true crimes, meaning when people break into your home, typically people will report that. So residential burglary, 265 last year, 397 the year before. When you look at it historically, and I'll show you the chart later, we are at an all-time low in terms of residential burglaries, which is a good thing. And when I'm talking to our crime analyst and why are the residential burglaries so low, I think it's more and more people getting home security. They're so readily available now. You can just pick them up at Costco and so forth. So having that technology and more people working from home is having an impact, we believe. So we'll continue to watch that trend. Obviously, trends can change, but our residential burglary numbers are overall pretty low. And then, larceny, which is theft, wow, equal. And then motor vehicle theft, down 22%. And this is one of those other crimes that are key indicator crimes that most people will report when their cars are stolen. So these are, so I will now go into more details. And I will tell you this, 7,600 crimes, I'd like to see that to be lower. And that's still a high number. And until we address our social issues, I think our citizens, not just in our citizen, but our region, our country, are going to feel the safety issue will continue to be an issue. When I say social issues, we are in the midst of a drug epidemic. We have a lot of people that are addicts that is contributing to crime, and that's visibly visible to our citizens. Homelessness issue that's visible to our citizens. And then, a lot of domestic violence too. All those things, those social issues, play a role into how people, whether they feel safe or not. What I'm reporting to you are just raw numbers, but that doesn't necessarily, just because we're down 9%, doesn't necessarily make our citizens feel safer. Another issue that's, that we need to address as a society, particularly in King County, is repeat offenders. Our police officers, if how they feel about this, if they just locked up the people we arrest, our significant, in terms of like violent crime, would significantly drop. So there's a criminal justice issue that I think we need to work on in King County. And then drug epidemic, there's tremendous amount of drug that's coming up from the south, from outside of our country, and simply demand for drugs. We have a lot of people that are dependent on drugs in our society, and that's contributing to much of it, much of what we're seeing today. Okay, so one of the things I want to share with you about our community, in 2016, we saw a tremendous population increase, and in 2017, we saw equal growth, 3,000 per year. That's a significant growth for our community. And then after that, it kind of tapers off. It grew by 1,000, and it grew by 400 or 500 the year before. But when we look at crime number trend, you'll note that in 16 and 17, we saw a significant increase in crime, and that is just simply attributed to our population growth, people coming into our community in those years. And we are the 5th largest city in King County. So we're not a large city, but we're certainly not a small community in comparison to other jurisdictions. Okay.
Do you mind if I ask a question?
Sure.
Or do you want me to wait?
No, this is your meeting.
So in 16 and 17, when we had such a large increase in population, did we add more police officers at that time?
Well, we've been steadily increasing officers. We were, during the Great Recession, we were down to 122. And since then, we've been adding officers. Now we are up to 134 officers. And off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you exactly how many we increase per year, but we have been increasing. So we are today at 1.37 officers per 1,000 residents.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I talked before, maybe when light rail comes in, maybe there's a huge number of people coming in or vehicle coming into our city. If we're no longer a bedroom community and we start to go vertical and the population, number of people coming into our city has tremendously grown, of course that attributes to crime. So, and we have major corridors going through our city, Highway 99, 320th, I-5. So we're not removed to some, community off to the side where people aren't going through. I mean, we have a robust transit system, and a lot of people are coming into our city. Now, when light rail gets built, that means tremendous more number of people from south, east, they're all going to be coming to our light rail station. So that, when that happens, maybe 1.40, what I've been recommending, isn't a fit anymore, But currently, I would tell you that if we maintain at 1.40, if we're 100,000, we should have about 140. But dynamics of a community changes, that could change the ratio, the need for the community. Okay, so next slide. This is per capita. This is important because as population grows, you can't measure just crime by just the numbers because, so you need to do it per capita. So per 100,000 residents, you can see that in 2015-16, you can tell we're 108 crime per 100,000 residents, and then we start to drop down. 17, we did a little better. 18, a little better. 19, a little better. Okay, so at no time am I saying that we don't have crime in Federal Way. I'm reporting the fact that last 3 years we've been trending down, which is good. And I would tell you that not every year I'm going to come up here and tell you that we're going down. Crime is cyclical, generally speaking. So at some point, for various reasons, economy, other factors could drive crime up. Okay. So total NIBR numbers, so I was telling you that 2016 was our highest year, dating back to 2013 there, and then 91 crimes, 83, and then 76, downward trend. So this is just our fourth quarter numbers, 2,145 crimes versus 1,787, 18 versus 19. Then here's our murder numbers. So in 2014, we had 4 murders, 4 in 15, 9 in 2016. That was a bad year for us. And then 17, we had 7 murders, and then we had 1 in 2018. And then 2019, we had 3. So one of the things, if you're following crime trend, it's, you don't know when it's going to peak and what are the factors why murder numbers are going up. So it's good that we had a good year in 2018 because it shows that it was an unusual occurrence in terms of total numbers. If you were continuing to trend at 9, 10, 11, and 12, then we got an issue. So here, 2019, we had 3 murders.
I have another question.
Yes, ma'am?
I spent the morning at a domestic violence meeting for King County, and we talked about, what happens with some domestic violence crimes. And of these murders that we've had, I know 2016 was at the domestic violence, the time that we had the gentleman shoot, 5 people? 4 people? So of these murders, do you know how many are domestic violence or how many are where someone knew someone and shot someone they knew or just a stranger?
Yeah, somebody knowing someone doesn't necessarily make it domestic violence.
Right.
Yeah, generally speaking, these type of
yeah.
crimes, it's not random generally. And I would tell you just historically, about 50% of our murders are domestic violence related, some sort of domestic related, generally.
But most of these are not random, though. They're somebody who gets into a fight with someone they know, or...
Yeah, generally speaking, I would tell you if we have a shooting or somebody gets shot, 70, 80% of the time they're drug related. Usually drug transaction or something like that will result in some sort of a shooting and maybe somebody getting killed. Far higher number with that. But in 2016, we did have random killings that occurred in 2016. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so this chart just simply shows that all of our murders occurred in the fourth quarter of 2019. And aggravated assaults, for 2019, we had 175 reported crimes, and then the year before was 211. Okay, so that's a positive sign to see a reduction there. But in the fourth quarter overall, we saw an uptick, 37 the year before, 49 in 2019. And then robberies, I shared with you we were down. So 2019, we had 156 robberies. The year before, 233. So there's kind of an uptick if you look at the years going up, and then we saw last year was a good year in terms of overall. But I would tell you, 156 robberies, still, I'd like to see that number lower. That's still too much. And then fourth quarter, in 2018, we had 60 robberies, and fourth quarter, we had 37. Auto theft, 2019, we had 634 auto theft, down from 816. And if you look at the numbers, a downward trend since 2016. So all the years here, 2014, 19, last year was the lowest number in terms of auto theft. Fourth quarter, 207 to 171. And here's our commercial burglaries. I was telling you, showing an upward trend. So if you look at all the years, this is one area that we're up a little bit. So one of the things we're going to work on in 2020 is to try to address commercial burglaries. That'd be one of our goals as an agency to try to impact. Fourth quarter, 75 to 64. And here's our residential burglaries. In 2014, we had 629 residential burglaries. It remained pretty flat for a number of years, but last year we saw a significant drop, 265 residential burglaries. Fourth quarter burglaries, 98 in 2018 and 64 in the fourth quarter of 2019. So I wanted to maybe just kind of highlight some of the information I shared with you. So there's been a reduction of overall crime for the past 3 years. And I would say 5 out of the past 6 years. But I would tell you there's a lot more work that lies ahead and the issues that our society is facing today. I would tell you that we're constantly looking at our approach and adjusting our policing model to maximize public safety. We follow very close crime data to see where the hot spots are. We deploy our officers there, and we've had much success. When we had, not too long ago, recently, we had a couple of individuals, one juvenile, one adult. They were carjacking. So we had carjacking 2 nights in a row. And once we made that arrest, we suspect that they were involved in other crimes as well. You know, things calmed down. So there isn't that many individuals out there committing those type of violent crimes. So when we make an arrest like that, significant arrest, it has a huge, huge impact. And one of the things that we do strategically is that we partner with Department of Corrections. We look at people with warrants and people who are most likely to commit violent crimes. We're proactive, and we go out and arrest them for the warrants and take them off our streets and from our communities. So we conduct these operations generally about a couple of times a month. So we've been doing that for a while. It's a long-term effort to remove violent individuals from our community. Another program that we have is automated license plate readers. We have 4 vehicles that are equipped with technology to read license plates. And quite often, one of the precursor for people committing violent crime, like robberies, burglaries, and other crimes, is steal a car before they commit those crimes. So a lot of times when we find a stolen car with occupied, we're making arrests, we're preventing other crimes as well. And sometimes we get into maybe even a pursuit with these vehicles, and maybe we don't catch them, but it's still intervention, because they're probably up to committing other crimes as well. So this is a great technology, and we think it's had a positive impact in terms of long-term strategy of impacting crime, because not every community is using this technology. Another thing that we do is we partner with our law department and also with code enforcement. So when we have a drug house or a house that's maybe occupied by gang members, but they're engaging in criminal activity, we do try to mitigate that, and at times we're taking steps to seize their home for drug activity. So we're partnering with them on that, and we can't do it alone in terms of just law enforcement, so code enforcement is a great tool for us. Another thing that we've done over the years, and it's been a long-term planning, but we have our Safe City cameras. Now we're up to 240 cameras. And quite often at intersections, we're able to solve who had the green light, who didn't. When we get accidents where people have questions about who had the right-of-way, the Safe City camera's been great to go back, and then we record that portion of the accident, so we keep it for record. So for accidents, it's used most often for accidents, but we've used our Safe City camera to solve crime. We've been able to get license plate number or track a vehicle from one end to another part of a city. So it's been a great tool for us, and we should continue to add these cameras because it becomes a great tool for us. And then one of the things I wanted to kind of share with you and the public is that we have our automated external defibrillator AED program. And pretty soon, a significant number of our patrol officers will carry these AEDs. We just got a grant for 30 more of these. And I know sometimes our people are racing, but it's not always about crime. Quite often we're running a licensed siren to injury accidents, has nothing to do with crime. And sometimes we're going to CPR calls. And we're one of very few agencies where as first responder police officers, we're responding to CPR calls. We've had many saves. So this is a program a little bit unique to Federal Way. So we're glad we're doing that. And I wanted to share with you our total accident enforcement numbers. In 2019, we had 3 fatal collisions. The year before, we had 8. And then number of injury accidents, 572 versus 722. And then non-injury accident is down, so our overall accidents investigated is down. So it's a good year for us in 2019 overall. And then DUI accidents, pretty flat, 52 to 56. Hit and run accidents, we're down 16%. And then DUI arrests, 159. And then you look at the total infraction we issued a little 10% more tickets in 19 than we did in 2018. So overall, pretty good traffic numbers. And I've said this many times before, for a law-abiding citizen, we're are most likely to be injured or killed in a traffic accident than any other cause. But it's not the attention getter. It's never going to do that because there's no crime element generally involved with traffic accidents. But this is where we respond to quite a few number of accidents every day, and this is where our citizens get hurt the most. I also wanted to share with you our overall response time. In 2019, we were at 1741. So from the minute someone calls 911 to an officer that arrives, 1741. So it's down from the year before of 1856. And then our total calls for service, we're down by a couple of thousand calls. In 18, we had 77,000 calls, and then in 19, 75,000. You'll note that when we had our population boom, 15, 16, 17, that's where we had the highest calls for service. We're up to 83,000. Okay, so jail services. We've been at it now for about a month and a half. So our transition away from SCORE officially began really last week in December and into January. We pulled out and we stopped booking into SCORE December 31st. So our current practice now, all felony crimes get booked into King County Jail. During business hours, we can take them to RJC here in Kent. After that, after hours, they have to all go to downtown Seattle. So misdemeanor bookings, our primary booking facility is Kent. We have a minimum bed there of 5, and then we'll go to Puyallup, minimum guaranteed bed of 3 there. And then our next stop is Issaquah. But generally speaking, we're moving inmates out of Kent Jail every day. So for misdemeanor bookings, our officers are generally going to Kent, sometimes Puyallup. So they're reasonable driving distance. And then we have additional jail contract with King and Yakima County. And then we hired 4 transport officers with council approval. And then in many ways, these officers will actually lessen the workload of our patrol officers because when they make an arrest, if a transport officer is available, they'll just take them from our patrol officer from the street, or we'll meet at the station and then take them to Kent. So the system so far is working. We're able to bring all the inmates from jails and bring them to court and take them back. One One of the things we were able to reach an agreement with the labor group, the guild, was that these officers can do parking enforcement. So as they get settled in to their jobs during their downtime, they can do handicap parking enforcement or address parking complaints, and maybe even come to accidents to provide backup for traffic control. And just leaving SCORE, at our peak, we were at $6.4 million in 2018, and from that, we anticipate, for budgeting purposes, we're saving $2.1 million. And we may have additional savings. Our jail budget now is $4.3 million, and we anticipate having additional savings. And then, like I said, no major hiccups. We're just fine-tuning it, but our transition has gone well. So our people perform really well. We planned ahead for this transition, and we did not encounter any major issues. And that concludes my presentation.
Council, are there any questions? Councilmember Seth Dawson.
Yeah. Just a comment, auto theft in 2016, 3 of those were from my house, so. The auto thefts,
From
From
you,
me.
From you.
yeah.
Okay.
Wait, but my question is, right, from my apartment, yeah. I think the first, oh, sorry. The very first page with the data, 2019, 2018 comparison.
Okay.
So there's kidnapping, 17 to 29. So if you can explain what that is, and then is human trafficking under kidnapping, or there's no correlation whatsoever?
Am I on the right slide already?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Kidnapping and human trafficking would have no connection as a general rule. I mean, obviously, if somebody's kidnapped, it could involve human trafficking, but it would be just classified as being kidnapped. What I could tell you about kidnapping, 17 to 29, to my recollection, there's none that, like, a stranger was kidnapped. These are typically domestic violence, typically child custody issue, or maybe domestic violence where somebody's held against their will in the home, something like that. So these aren't like a child being snatched from the street by a stranger. I mean, that would draw a tremendous amount of attention.
Okay. So thank you for this, and I appreciate the numbers went down in 2019. Unfortunately, though, the perception or what we see on social media is always crime, 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 federal way, felony way, all this. So data speaks better if people could look at it, but it doesn't work that way. So how do we as council members counter or respond to that? Because it's people's reality. Also, some people do experience it, and then sometimes it's the same crime that's reported over and over, which gets exaggerated. So how do we respond to that, or how do we have that conversation
Yeah, it's
for
a
people
current,
to understand that it's...
Sure, it's a current environment that we're living. So bottom line is people are inundated with crime, meaning 5 years ago even, 10 years ago, there's no way people would have known about these crimes. Because what happens with social media platforms is somebody sees a crime or some incident, they post it. And then, so we have a pretty robust federal way community group that posts crime, and then a lot of times the media gets crime stories from those postings, and then we have a freelance media person that's very focused in federal way, so he'll be working on the weekends and post things, and people see that. So bottom line is that's the information age, that people are exposed to so much information, so it creates that perception. And I'm not saying there isn't crime. I just reported that there's 7,600 crimes, and we need to, I like to see that number be lower. But that's how even media, even regional news, are getting news from social media. So there's so much information, and then we also have the local newspaper who comes to the police department, I don't know, once or twice a week, and reads through all the police reports, and they decide what they're going to, publish. So there's that, and then so that's the environment we're in. But I would tell you, people aren't going to, and I explained it earlier, people aren't going to feel safer until we address the social issues. And those social issues I just shared with you, so I don't necessarily want to repeat it, but until those issues are addressed, I think people are going to continue to feel that, crime isn't being addressed, and that's the drug addiction, drug epidemic that we're in. We don't have capacity, even if we encounter people with mental health, we're dealing with the same people and over. Where do you take them? What do you do when you encounter a drug addict? Where do you take them? There's no place to take them. There's work in progress at the state level, even at the federal level, to create more capacity, and it's a big ship to turn around. But at some point, we got to get a handle on this drug addiction, drug issues that's fueling much of the crime. So once we get a handle on that, it's going to take a long time, but there's work in progress. And then the frustration that the police have is we're dealing with the same people over and over. Quite often involves juveniles, repeat offenders. So there's frustration on our part for that, but that's another issue that we need to deal with in the criminal justice system. So I'm not suggesting that we need to incarcerate everyone or have you, but there's certainly some lacking in accountability when we see the same criminals over and over.
Okay, thank you.
Council members, any other questions? Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you. Do you have a separate, or could you in the future make a separate sheet for the domestic violence crimes that occur in Federal Way?
I could share information with that. I mean, we respond to 3,100. Last year, we responded to 3,100 domestic violence calls for service. And that equates to about 6 or 7 calls a day.
It's quite a few, I know, but I don't think that other people know how much of this could be domestic violence. And do these numbers include juveniles, the numbers you have listed here?
Yeah, people report crime. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's a juvenile who committed the crime or adult. It's all included.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll see what I can do. I'm not so sure that we can extract which one are, all DV related or not, but I can tell you generally how many DV calls we responded to, how many DV arrests we make, so I can share that information.
Okay, that'd be great, thank you.
Council members, any other questions? I have a few. Back on the same page, our one human trafficking victim, do you know what happened there?
I do not know the details
Okay.
offhand.
It's concerning. And then it's really odd that your larceny would be 3,106 in 18 and the same in 19. That doesn't correlate.
Yeah, I think I made a comment. I just recognize it's the same number. But I think
Probably,
it's,
maybe it's a typo or something.
I don't think so. I think it's just coincidence. It just landed there because the number continues to change because there's information lagging. Data entry isn't done instantly, so sometimes it's lagging. This is probably the end result number that we're going to be presenting, but such a big number to have exact number. I can certainly have our crime analyst coordinator look at it again, but the numbers are probably going to change again a little bit because there's probably still some cases that needs to be entered.
So then my other question is, commercial robbery for commercial, are those just the ones, I mean, because we had people going out of the grocery stores with the shopping carts full. We're only counting those that are over $2,500, the ones that are being arrested? Is that what we're doing, or what are we doing?
No, the dollar amount has nothing to do with it.
Okay.
Yeah, if a store detains a shoplifter and we're called, yes, that will be an arrest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you, finally, on the type of vehicle stolen, is there a particular type, like a truck or a van, that they like to steal and then leave somewhere after they've used it for residential burglary or commercial burglary?
Ford 150 pickups are really popular. That's been trending for a while, but Honda Civics are real popular, and so are Honda Accords.
Is that so they can take out the parts, or?
In some cases, yeah, but it's older Hondas, generally, they're
Oh.
hot vehicles. Mhm.
Okay. Then, Councilmember Cepheus, I'm wondering if you take back the issue about how we're arresting and locking up people in the county with, I know that the Dan Satterberg, prosecuting attorney, has to follow what the state legislature says, but this is a big issue to talk about. For example, they raised the amount of money that somebody could be arrested for to be actually put in jail. And so I'm wondering if that would be a community issue to be discussed in the Public Issues Committee for suburban cities.
Actually,
It'd be
Madam Chair, I'm the member
Martin, so.
Okay.
to
Oh,
SCA,
yeah. Okay, so,
and would be happy to discuss that issue.
I think
at
that
the
would be a
SCA.
good idea.
Yeah.
Right, that's perfect place. There's 39 cities in King County other than Seattle where they can discuss those issues.
Yeah.
Because we're being driven by some pretty onerous things and it's affecting our communities.
Well, and I have to be honest, I only heard a part of that, and I thought, oh, that sounds like my role with the SCA, but.
Okay, I'll talk to them.
But, yeah, I definitely, because I know you have experience in that
Yeah.
area as well, and I know that I've gone with Councilor Cepheus to several meetings of those, but I do think that there's value in this committee discussing how that works, and how do we, and how much can we do within the city government?
Well, a lot,
and
actually.
addressing, right.
Because it's coming down from the legislature.
Yeah,
And, for example, in the House, primarily, the legislature in the House because of the population in Seattle, it's a Seattle-centric
Mhm.
thing. And so if it's coming from the legislature to Satterberg,
Mhm.
King County, then maybe that's something the rest of us can talk with all the cities to go back to the legislature to change what's going on, because we're having issues with drug, we're having issues with.
And if I may? And I think part of this was discussed during the retreat, and that's, I really do want, and I am requesting humbly that you as the chair add this to the agenda at some point, sooner than later, that we discuss items that we have discussed before, and that's, what does it take for us to be able to add a component to the courts that goes after people when it comes to theft?
Yeah, okay.
Because right now, Madam Chair, that, if someone steals over a certain amount, nothing typically happens. And so I'd like us to move in the direction of how do we walk towards a solution in that area? And of course, work within our regional partners as well.
Yeah, with the other cities. And thank you very much,
I have a
Chief
question.
Wong. We had a call this morning about a business on Pack Highway that had homeless folks setting up homes behind the vacant business and using garbage, and there was garbage strewn all around. I went back a couple times, and with the commercial broker was there. It's a vacant business, and the property owner wants to rent it out, but he can't, well, first of all, it wasn't safe, but then I was ready to get out of my car and start yelling at these guys, but then I thought, maybe better not. It's young men, and they're hanging out around in the area, Pack Highway, around Jack in the Box, around that area, and they're setting up their living areas, and then there's just garbage strewn all over, and it was heart-rending to see that happening. And so, but thank you, we had the police responded right away and moved the people out of there, but my feeling is they're going to come back, and how do we address that issue?
Yep,
And I know our businesses want to feel safe.
Yep, we're going to have to partner with the business owner and clean up the area and
Thank you.
change the environment.
Yeah, I talked to them about cleaning it up, yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you very much.
I have one question, one more question,
Certainly,
sorry.
Councilmember?
Is there a way we can get the same data for other cities, at least for their crime numbers? Not necessarily an exhaustive one, but just the total number?
Sure, every city will do NIBRS reporting, and WASPIC, FBI will publish it probably month of May. So those become official numbers, and then all the crime numbers from every city is available. But I just want to caution you about measuring to other cities, because not every city measures crimes the same. Like if somebody does online reporting for us, that counts towards our NIBRG numbers. I'm not so sure every city's doing that, and then some cities, they don't take a theft report unless it's $1,500 or more. So for some cities, it's a resource issue. We don't have a dollar amount, well, we take a report or we don't. We just take everything, but some cities don't. So you got to be careful not to just look at one city numbers, or another jurisdiction in another part of the country maybe does UCR reporting still, and they only report 9 crimes. So if you were reporting 27 crimes and they're reporting 9, it's not apples to apples for measurement.
Yeah, I was more looking at King County, South King County, but I don't know.
Yeah, most cities
Is-
around here are doing NIBRS, so.
That's what I'm more
It will
interested
become
in.
available. It's something to look at, sure.
Yeah.
But I just want to caution you that it's not always measuring the
Right.
same way, so you got to be careful.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Copain?
Chief, would you recommend that if someone wants to go down the path of looking at different cities, that they compare their year versus year numbers as opposed to their numbers versus our numbers?
I totally concur with what your
Okay,
statement. Yeah,
okay.
you should look at your city to city, because the method in which you're collecting the data hasn't changed. So that's the most accurate way of measuring.
I think that's where some of the misperceptions come into play with the general public on comparing cities that way. So,
And you got to be careful about vendors, companies, alarm companies, they want to sell you a product. And it was almost laughable when they put something out into a community and they say University Place is the most dangerous city in Washington. It's like, no, they're just trying to sell a product. So you got to be careful about social media, because it's advertising basically.
Yeah, and I
So-
think that's why I'm asking if,
Yeah.
because again, the perception about Federal Way is so negative. I think it would be safe to maybe say if we have similar reports from neighboring cities, then maybe people understand it's not just unique to us. That's where I'm going with this,
I
but.
think most people
you-
know that the social issues that we're dealing with isn't exclusive to Federal Way. And
People
I'm
make it
telling you,
sound
it's-
like it,
this
though.
perception thing isn't going to change overnight, because everything else that's going on, in our society today. But I know that in the 80s and 90s, when we had problem with crack cocaine, it was a pretty violent time in our history. But until we got through that drug epidemic, we had huge problems. So what I'm telling you, we're going through another one of those, maybe it's not as bad as crack cocaine epidemic, but the opioid epidemic is pretty bad. And I don't know that we turned the corner. I don't know where we are on that curve. But it's something that we're certainly dealing with as a society. So perception thing, it's going to take time, because until we address the social issues, this issue isn't going to go away. And our crime numbers would be much lower if we weren't going through a drug epidemic right now.
Thank you.
Speaking about products, if somebody installs LoJack in their vehicle, does that help you find the vehicle?
Absolutely, yeah. Technology is a great thing, and generally car thieves, unless they're really ignorant, they're not going to steal cars with, LoJack, because they know we can track it.
How do they know when it's in the vehicle?
Oh, they know what models generally have LoJack or not. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Anything else?
One last
Deputy
thing.
Mayor?
When someone is affected by crime, if their car is stolen, if someone's casing their house, they feel uncomfortable. If they go to the grocery store and someone asks them for money and they feel uncomfortable, we can't discount those feelings. If someone doesn't feel safe, that's their feeling. And as a council and as a city, we just need to continue to have our police respond, have our police out there making contact with our citizens, which they're doing. and just continue with that, because we've had a car stolen. It's a horrible feeling to go out to the parking spot and your car's gone. And you feel violated. You know, it's just and then you get the car back and it's trashed, and and you have all sorts of issues. So, we can't discount people's feelings, and we just need to listen to them, to let them know that we are working on the problem. We are hiring more police. We're listening to them, and we're hoping that for their situation, we're there to help them and listen to them and help them work through it.
One thing I do want to share with you, that there is work that's going on at the mayor level, and even police chiefs are involved to meet with, King County Prosecutor's Office to try to address some of these issues. So
Good.
I know our mayor's involved, Mayor Farrell's involved with other mayors. So there's long-term effort that's occurring. So we're not sitting idle as a city to, how can we have a positive impact? So those things are occurring. And the things you talked about, working with the state they're not duplication by any means, but there's some work that's being done to try to, but it's only one piece of the pie. But I'm looking at more of a bigger issue that's happening not just in our city, but in our region, our state. And I share with you what I believe as a police professional that needs to occur, and isn't going to happen overnight. But we need to have more resources. We can't just rely on the police, because we're dealing with the same people and we got nowhere to take them.
All right, well, thank you very much, Chief Wong. Appreciate your
Thank you.
information. Now we're moving forward to the Valley SWAT Interlocal Agreement Addendum, and Chief Wong.
I thought Sarah was up next. Okay, so the police department is seeking committee and council approval to allow Des Moines Police Department to join our Valley SWAT team. And the current SWAT team is made up of Auburn, Federal Way, Kent, Renton, Tukwila, and Port of Seattle. And we established a multi-jurisdictional SWAT team that's been in place for a while to deal with the high-risk criminal situations. So Des Moines Police Department is wanting to join the Valley SWAT team. There is no financial impact to our city for them joining. The content of the interlocal agreement doesn't change at all, other than allowing Des Moines PD to join our SWAT team. So we're seeking your approval to move it to full council for approval.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. What did they do before? Did they use another SWAT?
Yeah, they would just
Agency?
ask for help.
Oh.
And we would go support
help
them,
them.
or they would maybe call King County. But generally speaking, they would call our Valley SWAT, and we would go assist as a mutual aid.
Okay.
And did we
Thank you.
charge them?
No, we don't charge.
Okay. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
So then what's the benefit to them now by joining? What difference?
I think for them would be career development for their people, gives them more opportunity to maybe more specialty assignments for their assigned officers. And the positive end for us, if there was a positive end, it's obviously relationship. We want to support each other. But on the other hand, if there's any liability issues, they're one more city that's going to be, part of the group as well. So there's benefit for us that way, but it's not the main reason. But they're wanting their officers to be part of the SWAT team, and then the SWAT team will be more accessible to them in their city.
Are there any other questions? Councilmember Essep, is there a motion?
Yes. I move to forward the proposed Valley SWAT interlocal agreement addendum to the February 18, 2020 consent agenda for approval.
And I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Keep wanting to call you Commander, but thank you very much, Chief Wong.
It's okay.
It's been a while. Okay.
The next item, we're seeking, again, committee council approval to accept Justice Assistance Grant. This is a JAG money. The JAG is the program. We're a primary provider of federal criminal justice funding for state and local jurisdictions. With committee council approval, we would be accepting $34,000 for fiscal year 17, and then fiscal year 18, about $40,000, and then fiscal year 19, we'd be receiving a grant of $41,000. This was kind of held up for a while, but they're finally releasing the funds at the federal level to jurisdictions in King County. So there may be a city that may not be taking JAG grant money, so there could be a little increase in the numbers I presented to you, but there's no matching funds. We use JAG money to purchase a variety of different equipment, sometimes staff time. We use fiscal JAG money to buy a part-time employee for IT, because there's IT needs. So it's funds we definitely want to receive, but there's no downside whatsoever.
Okay. Thank you. Council, are there any questions? Deputy Mayor?
So why would the city of Bellevue decline taking any money from JAG?
I think it's more of a political issue
Okay.
with sanctuary status, that type of thing. So most jurisdictions are certainly accepting the money, but Bellevue has decided they're not going to take federal money.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I move to forward the proposed JAG grant fiscal year 17, fiscal year 18, and fiscal year 19 new allocation MOUs to the February 18, 2020 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Chief Wong.
Thank you.
So, Sarah Bridgeford, this is the agreement with Federal Youth Action Team for capacity building and community support. Item J.
Good evening, Chair Kochmar, members of the committee, Deputy Mayor Honda, and other council members. This evening, I am presenting to you the agreement with the Federal Way Youth Action Team. The policy question before you is, should the city enter into an agreement with the Federal Way Youth Action Team for capacity building and community support? So you'll recall that City Council allocated $25,000 to the Federal Way Youth Action Team in 2019, and pending performance on those contracts, we were going to be coming forward with an amendment. Because of the timing, we're coming with a new contract. It's also appropriate as they're in year 2 of this program in particular. They have a better sense of where that program is going. They've developed more of the components that go with it. You'll see in the staff report that the Youth Action Team did meet performance on the equivalent contract for 2019 and are seeking to use the $25,000 for ongoing work on the critical incident response protocol. There are a number of trainings and workshops that are proposed in the contract. It's 24 total. I think the thing that somewhat gets lost in their proposal, but is really important about this program, is that the youth events in particular include a lot more than just training. As a new program, they're still developing what some of that will look like, but at each event, the youth are referred by school personnel, community members, other professionals in the community after an incident has occurred. They attend the training, they develop action plans at the training, and then the Youth Action Team staff are actually working with the youth and their families to implement them after the training has occurred. We'll be working with them on how they tell that story a little bit differently. With newer programs and newer organizations, we try to kind of meet them where they're at for what they're reporting as far as service units, and then help them progress in how they share the impact of their program. It's a great opportunity to support a newer body of work and watch it develop. They do anticipate seeing changes to the protocol, as well as fine-tuning all of the workshops for the different stakeholders over the course of the year.
Councilmember, do we have any questions? No. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. In 2019, did they receive any funding from us then?
Yes, they did. So they received the full contract amount for the capacity building, which was $13,000 or $13,500.
Okay.
The other contract had been working as a fiscal sponsor with another agency, and the Youth Action Team elected not to provide that funding to them and hadn't moved forward with that program. And it was late in the year that we received that notification, which is why those funds didn't go to another program in 2019.
Okay, thank you.
Council, any other questions? Do I hear a motion?
I move to forward the proposed agreement to the February 18, 2020 consent agenda for approval.
Thank you, and I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Now we're moving on to item K, agreement with Phenomenal She for after-school programming. Again, Ms. Bridgeford.
Thank you. The policy question before you is, should the city enter into an agreement with Phenomenal She for after-school programming? I will give the background on this funding just one time. It will apply to this item as well as the next two. The funding for these three contracts and for the after-school programming is provided through the Department of Commerce. A total of $142,500 is available to the city to implement new or expanded after-school programming in the city. We had a total of 3 eligible complete applicants. You see all 3 funded in this process. We had a review committee comprised of Human Service Commissioners as well as members of the former Violence Prevention Coalition Steering Committee. They were dedicated, and completed their evaluations, and made a recommendation for funding, which is what you'll see. Phenomenal She is recommended for $35,892 for January 1, 2020 through June 30th of 2020. Their program is an after-school program that is primarily made up of group sessions as well as some field trips and events that are really geared at social emotional learning for the kids. They're partnering with Game of Life. Phenomenal She is an agency that is focused on young women and young women of color in particular. Most of their services are designed for that population. They would serve anybody who came for their services. But in that vein, when they applied, they did apply with the partnership with Game of Life, which is largely focused on young men. So it's a nice partnership for them and very comparable services. It felt like a alignment when Phenomenal She sought these funds. You'll see that in their program, they will be tracking the outcome of increased employment and education attainment, and we look forward to seeing what they can do. So that's my presentation on the contract. Do you have any questions?
Any questions, Council? Okay. Councilmember Moore.
Just more of a comment, Madam Chair, and that's Sarah and I have spent some time talking about Phenomenal She and program, and I'm utterly excited about this. I think, the best part of today is we're starting to see small little nonprofits rise up and try to play a pivotal role in solving our challenges that our youth faces. And I think it's really exciting to see the city of Federal step up and work in developing those relationships and those partnerships with organizations such as Phenomenal She. And I think I'm really optimistic that we're going to be seeing great results and great numbers coming from this organization. And I know there's a lot of great leaders that are leading the way with this nonprofit. So I'm just really excited about this organization. And Sarah, thank you for the guidance and your partnership in working with this nonprofit and quite frankly, other nonprofits as well.
Any other questions, Council? Councilmember? Okay, do I hear a motion?
I move to forward the proposed agreement to the February 18, 2020 consent agenda for approval.
Thank you. I'll second that. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. The next two are pretty similar, so go ahead.
So the next one is for the agreement with El Centro de la Raza for after-school programming. The policy question is, should the city enter into an agreement with El Centro de la Raza for after-school programming? El Centro de la Raza is a new organization to Federal Way, though they have long served residents from the city. We're excited that they have a new building that just had an opening. This program will actually not be housed there. They'll be renting space to provide after-school programming that is designed and geared towards Latino Spanish-speaking youth, though it would serve everyone. The program is after school and also runs through the summer. They are looking at outcomes that include increased attention, school connection, confidence, and grade level achievement. They will be awarded $35,892 for July 1st, 2020 through June 30th of 2021. Are there any questions that I can answer?
Council? No? I would just like to reiterate that all this money for that previous, this and the next, is all coming from the state legislature for us to
That is correct.
distribute. Go ahead, Councilmember Dawson.
Yeah, one question is around improved attention skills. So what do they do, or how do you measure that?
So they have, and I think it's actually in the contract, that they use surveys, observation, and one other component, hold on.
Measured by attendance, it says.
Yes, yeah. So that is, what most nonprofits will do. They're using a combination of modes to measure that. They have established survey tools that they've been using for the past, I think it's 4 years that they've been delivering the service in their Seattle-based location. And it's an established survey that they're using. They can also use observation. That's one of the most common tools that we see for measuring change.
Interesting, okay. So this contract is from July 2020 to 2021, correct?
That is correct.
So, and this is, so this pot of money has nothing to do with the human services cycle that we're starting in 2021?
It does not.
Can they apply for the 2021 grant cycle for the
Yes.
same program, though?
Yes, they could.
Okay.
The same is true actually for all of these grant recipients.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Do I hear a motion?
I move approval of the proposed agreement, no, I'm sorry. I move to forward the proposed agreement to the February 18, 2020 consent agenda for approval.
Okay, and I'll second that for the El Centro de la Raza for after-school programming. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Sarah. Now you're up for the next one, too, which is Boys and Girls Club.
Yes. The policy question is, should the city enter into an agreement with the Boys and Girls Club of King County for after-school programming? This is an expansion of their current services, and it will be providing additional learning services and career development, really geared at the teens and the older youth. They're bringing a program that they've been offering elsewhere called Youth Force that is designed to serve youth of color and, again, that older teen segment of the population. They are recommended for funding in the amount of $35,358, and they will be measuring increased school attendance, on-time achievement, and post-secondary school and training enrollment.
Any questions, council? Do I hear a motion?
I move to forward the proposed agreement to the February 18, 2020 consent agenda for approval.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And finally, Sarah, you have the resolution pooling the funding between South King County Housing and Homeless Partners, cities related to affordable and supportive housing.
So this is the funding that ties back to the substitute House Bill 1406, which is now in RCW 82.14.540. And this ties back to the recapture of the existing sales tax to be used for affordable housing. You might remember that the City Council took action on this via ordinance that passed on November 5th of 2019 in order to access the recapture of funds. Based on that action, the state did calculate that the maximum annual amount that the city could receive is $125,065.50 per year. So that was based on the 2019 sales tax amount. The use of the funds includes acquisition, new construction and preservation of affordable housing. And then for cities with populations under 100,000, we could also do rent assistance. The South King Housing and Homelessness Partners is the entity that's akin to Arch on the north and east side that focuses on homelessness and affordable housing. SKIP, as it's known, was established last year. The city of Federal Way is one of the participating jurisdictions, along with 8 other cities and King County. All 10 of the jurisdictions have taken action to access funds. That doesn't mean that they're all through their ordinance process, but every jurisdiction does plan on accessing funds. One of the things that House Bill 1406 set up was the ability to pool funds, and that could leverage the other funding using entities such as SKIP and Arch. While we could do rent assistance, we as staff, as well as others in the field, would just note that as our population is likely to exceed 100,000, it would be very short term. Also, the administration of a new program that we would do internally because of the reporting requirements, and we couldn't fund the staffing with those funds, would be prohibitive of providing rent assistance. It's also very short-term assistance. As we've discussed in the past, rent assistance is certainly needed, and we provide, I think, roughly $86,000 through our general fund grants at this time. But it doesn't get to a longer-term impact. It's a one-time funding assistance to a household that is in need and unable to pay rent for whatever the reason may be. But it doesn't necessarily increase their income or change their situation. By supporting affordable housing, such as preservation of existing affordable housing, we can make the affordability period of those properties longer term. So if they have an expiring affordability covenant, or if they're naturally occurring affordable housing, we can actually put an affordability covenant on the property if they were to receive funds. That would then make the affordability period 20 to 40 years. I think the state actually has a pretty long period that they would require. It's staff's recommendation that we look at the capital use for these funds, and that we pool funds to better leverage. At $125,000, that is a significant amount of funding for affordable housing, but it doesn't necessarily go very far in terms of renovation at an affordable housing complex. The ability to leverage with the other jurisdictions of SKIP is where we see the potential impact for maintaining our affordable housing for our residents. With that, SKIP actually took action on November 22nd to recommend that all participating jurisdictions in SKIP do pool funds. And that is why we have a resolution before you tonight, is that we would like the authorization to pool funds, provided that all other participating cities also pool funds. And that is how cities that have passed similar resolutions are also approaching this. If we're all in, we will all pool. If that changes, we would come back to council with other action steps to take.
Councilor, are there any questions? Seeing none, do I hear a motion?
I think I do have a question.
Go ahead.
So CTAC is not a part of this.
They're not.
So is there any way they can participate in this House Bill 1406?
Yes. Any city in this state can actually participate in 1406, and I'm not sure if CTAC has elected to do so. They would have had to pass their resolution by January of 2020. And I honestly, I don't know the status, but they can participate. If they've elected to move forward with their own resolution and ordinance, they can then manage the funds separately. In order to pool, they would have to be a participant in SKIP.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion?
Yes, I move to forward the proposed resolution to the February 18, 2020 consent agenda for approval.
And I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Ms. Birchford.
Thank you.
Now we're here for our last item of the evening, ordinance revising Federal Revised Code regarding pedestrian interference. Mr. Rhodes.
Good evening, Chair Coachmeyer, Deputy Mayor, and council members. Eric Rhodes, I'm the Assistant City Attorney, and I'm here to talk to you tonight about revising the city's pedestrian interference law. Staff recommends revising the pedestrian interference code to make it consistent with state and federal law. Asking for donations is a constitutionally protected free speech, and so the proposed revisions remove all references to begging or asking for money. The offensive behavior that was addressed by the pedestrian interference code, like intimidation, threats, abusive language, and physical contact, will remain prohibited by other code sections. And what will remain in the pedestrian interference code is obstructing traffic and standing in the median. And I'm available to answer any questions.
Councilor, are there any questions? Councilmember Moore?
Thank you so much, Eric. How would this, I think where do I start? I think we've brought up, several of us have brought up over a period of time, the firefighters and their Fill the Boot campaign efforts. How would this impact that?
So the law, as it's proposed, would allow asking for donations in the public right-of-way as long as it's not interfering with traffic.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Councilmember Copane?
Okay. What do we consider interfering with traffic? How is that defined?
It's defined by being in the right-of-way with the intent of obstructing traffic such that a person traveling in the right-of-way would need to change course to go around.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor?
Are you done?
I did have a follow-up, but you can go ahead and go.
So I believe I asked last week, Ryan, if the act of handing funding money to someone from your car to someone standing on the side of the street would obstruct traffic, and he said yes. So is that what this is addressing?
Well, if a vehicle stopped in the right-of-way in such a way that it was blocking traffic in order to hand money to someone, then that would be interference.
So if someone is on the street corner asking, with a sign asking for money, panhandling is what people call it, and someone is in their car, they roll down the window, they hand money to the person steps off the sidewalk to get the money, does this cover that? Is that allowed under this?
It would depend on whether that blocks traffic, so that if that occurred at a time when there's something like a red light, means that those cars aren't moving anyway, and that activity doesn't obstruct traffic, then I think this would not prohibit that activity.
So then firefighters could be on the sidewalk asking for money, they just could not, after the light changes, could not be in the roadway.
Right, they cannot be
Okay.
in the road in a way that it obstructs traffic.
Thank you.
Councilmember Copane?
Yeah, I just follow up. This is also addresses, I know there's been a lot of concern around jaywalking. This would address the jaywalking issue as well, basically, wouldn't it? Because it'd be pedestrian interference with vehicular traffic.
Well, this jaywalking in a way that caused people to
Right.
veer around a pedestrian, that would be addressed by this revised code section. But crossing in the middle of the block is also prohibited by other laws in the
Right.
RCWs.
Right, okay. Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councilmember Sefadossin, do I hear a motion?
Sure. I move to forward the proposed ordinance to first reading on February 18, 2020.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Rhodes.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other items for the good of the order? Anybody? Councilmember Moore, you look like you're thinking.
It's always a good thing.
That is, thank you. Could I pose a question for the attorney to come back to with an answer for this committee?
Sure.
Okay, so my question is, what is the number, that amount where, if someone steals or if there's a theft, then at what level does it start to take into effect in terms of accountability? For their
If you're speaking about somebody stealing from a home or elsewhere, I believe, Mr. Rose, is it 2,500
That's what I think it is.
before somebody's actually going to receive jail time?
Or some sort of accountability.
So your question was, what is the dollar amount where the
Where-
accused could be subject to jail time? I don't know that off the top of my head, but I will look that up and I'll
Yeah,
get that
as I remember, Mr. Rose, I think it used to be 250, it was raised to 750, then it was raised up to 1,500, and I believe now the legislature has set it as 2,500. Before, you can arrest them, but if they're going to receive jail time through King County, it's going to be 2,500 or above, which is a pretty high amount.
Is that not a felony, though, at that point? Are
I
you speaking about a misdemeanor,
I-
Councilmember Moore?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Are you speaking about a misdemeanor and being charged in our misdemeanor court?
Whatever action it is when they're charged and that amount, I would think theft, but whatever amount it is, that equates to, I'm thinking right now, I'm not a legal expert, but I know that most of us have sat down with Jim Ross, for example, and he's indicated that nothing happens until it meets a certain threshold, and I'm trying to find out what is that threshold before some sort of action is taken, whether it's jail time, whether it's something else.
Okay.
What is that threshold? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay,
Because
okay.
you have your felony amounts and you have your misdemeanor amounts, so.
Exactly. So I want to look at those two factors, and I'm hoping that can come back to this committee, and I'm certainly not a committee member, but I'm just,
Sure.
I would like to see the committee kind of look into that a
So,
little bit.
Eric, is that something you could bring back to our next Parks meeting?
I expect that I'll have that information before the Parks meeting, and I can send
Okay.
it to you.
All right, maybe
as
you
soon
could
as
just
I
send
get
out a email.
Exactly.
What do we do now? It's called email. Thank
Yeah.
you. That'd be great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Sure, so that you can take that back to PIC, yeah. Okay, well, our next meeting is going to be March 10th. And hearing no other discussion, meeting's adjourned at approximately 7 p.m. Thank you.